Welcome, everybody. I'm Joe Fornear with Stronghold Ministry, a cancer and support ministry, and we've been sharing stories about how God, our stronghold, has gotten us through cancer. He is definitely a stronghold in times of trouble. And today we have the pleasure of talking with Sandra Stiles, who lives in North Carolina in the Charlotte area. Is that right?
That's
And
right.
you'll hear the accent soon. As soon as she talks, she has an amazing story, and Sandra, can't wait to hear it. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, well, let me ask you how, and I got pre-permission to ask you how old you are, and tell us a little bit about your family.
Sure, I am 64, but I will be 65 in another month, and I'm looking forward to that. Never thought I would make that. And I am married, and I have one grown daughter and her husband that live about 2 hours from me here in North Carolina, and two grandchildren and one on the way. So
Okay.
I'm excited that I get to be a part of that.
Okay, and we are the same age, we discovered here, and um, she looks younger than me, but we are the same age. So uh, let's talk a little bit about how we met.
Well, I think it was at a convention where you were there, and it was just an amazing thing because I just kind of ran by you. I saw your table, and I think I had just been diagnosed at the time with cancer. And so and you shared with me, and I was also just blown away that you were willing to give things and not charge for it. That just spoke so much to your heart in helping people.
Yes, and I remember clearly the time you came up to our table and how um, we got to talking and sharing, and that was in 2018. I looked it up beforehand, and uh, so well, tell us about your diagnosis. When were you first diagnosed, and how did you feel?
Okay, well, in 2018, I just had some pain a little bit and some swelling in my neck. And so I went to an ear, nose, and throat doctor, and he diagnosed me with cancer. They found a spot on the back of my tongue and in my lymph nodes. And so they did two surgeries in 2018, and removed some lymph nodes and the spot on the back of my tongue,
Hmm.
and really felt like they had gotten everything. But then in the spring of 2021, I felt my neck, and I was like, okay, well, it's either a swollen gland or my cancer's back. Sure enough, it was. So I went to Duke in North Carolina, which everybody might know something about, a very well known hospital.
Hmm.
And so at that point in July, 4 months later, I get my prognosis, which was that it was stage 4C cancer, and that I had less than a year to live, and that it was going to go quickly at the end because honestly, I did not have I wasn't uncomfortable. I didn't have any problems breathing or anything, even though it was in my neck. And it was at that point, they figured out that it was wrapped around my carotid artery. And that is why at that point they told me they couldn't do surgery, they couldn't do any radiation or chemo because
Hmm.
of where it was located. It was just too risky.
Wow.
And so they did send me to have some infusions so that maybe it would make my quality of life better, even though wasn't going to have much of a quantity of life. And then right as that happened and I started having the infusions, my oncologist at Duke left Duke. He says, I would like for you to go to Yale. And I said, well, that's funny because that's where my daughter and my son-in-law are living. And so I went and I flew to Connecticut and to get my care there. And it was just, God's hand was all over it. I mean, we don't even have time for me to tell you, Joe, and how many God stories. I will say that the moment my doctor at Duke said that it was stage 4C cancer, I said to myself, in my spirit, I heard stage for Christ.
Hmm.
And yes, with my Southern accent, you can imagine the doors were open time and time and time again when I'm lying in a hospital bed in Connecticut or going to see a doctor, whether I'm in the waiting room or talking to a nurse or talking to a whoever, when I open my mouth, they want to know, oh, we love your accent. Where are you from and why are you here? And I get to open up and have that joy and that peace that makes absolutely no sense to most people that are in this situation. So then in November of 22, the tumor had grown enough around my carotid, and actually that some of the immunology infusions that they were giving me was actually causing the cancer to grow, not shrink. And so in fact, I'm so thankful for this because I have an antique vintage Airstream travel trailer that I was living in, but in Connecticut, you can't live in an Airstream during the winter. So I moved in with my daughter and son-in-law. 2 weeks later, I got up to go to the restroom around 11 o'clock that night, and I fell. And thank goodness, because if I'd have been in the Airstream, I'd have been by myself. My daughter heard me fall. She called the ambulance. They sent me home that night. The next night, the same exact. I'm not talking about getting dizzy and so that you can catch yourself. I'm talking about blacking out suddenly. So the second night I fell, I broke my femur in my left leg. So they sent me back to the hospital, and as God would have it, there was this incredible surgeon that was on call that weekend who gave me a hip replacement. But I remember saying to him, I'm not sure why we should because he said that was easier than trying to fix the femur. Just going ahead and put a rod in there and do that. But I said to him, I'm not so sure there's a reason to spend all that money and do all that work if I'm going to die, because see, that was what I thought was happening, because when my doctor at Duke said, when you go, it's going to go quickly because it's going to literally choke the life out of you.
Yeah.
And so that's what I thought was happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
yeah. Well, I mean, that's amazing all you went through there. So, well, how else has God helped you through it? You mentioned the peace that passes understanding. That was so strong. What about just knowing God's sovereign?
That's it. That's it. Knowing He is sovereign, and that Psalm 139 and several other verses in the Bible, places in the Bible, God picked out the day that I was to be born on into this world. He and He alone has already picked out the day I'm going to leave this world and go home. And every day in between, He has also planned. And so that there brings a lot of rest in that. And my biggest struggle probably was the loneliness, because in Connecticut, especially during the some COVID, but it doesn't matter. My daughter could not come to the hospital very often. My son-in-law did some, but I was lonely in a lot of ways. But God just really spoke to me that I'm never truly alone, and He made Himself more and more real to me during that time, which I would not trade for anything.
Yeah. That's why we call our name Stronghold Ministry, because God, during my battle, stage 4 cancer and metastatic melanoma, they gave me days to live in May of 2003. And I kept saying to God, I can't hang on to you. And He said, don't worry about hanging on to me. I'm hanging on to you. And
Yes.
so I was like, yeah, you are my stronghold. And the Old Testament says He's our stronghold, like 10, 13 times in there somewhere. And
Yes.
it's just great to know that personally and in real time when you're really struggling through a big season in your life. And, if you're watching today and you're going through a big season in your life, and maybe even you have the type of cancer that Sandra has, Sandra, you're open to talk to anybody, right?
I am.
Yes. All right. And so, contact me and I'll contact her and let you have her email, and we can, just facilitate that for you. But we'd love to support you too. We also have our Stronghold Ministry gift basket, and we send these all over the world, and we will send this to you if you have cancer or know somebody who has cancer. My book, My Stronghold's in there. Terry's book, Abiding Through the Shadows, on caretaking, and In His Grip is a devotional book we wrote together. We also put a $15 Walmart card in there, and we also talk about the 2 ways to get to heaven, how you get into heaven. And Sandra, that was a big part of what you went through, is just the peace of knowing where you would go if you were not to make it, so to speak.
That's right. That's right. And those resources that you gave me in 2018, when I had no idea what my journey was going to be, that really was a helpful thing. It just spoke to me so much. So I highly recommend anybody that's struggling with cancer or really anything.
God is great, and God has healed you, and you're doing good right now.
I am. So yes, at the end of this, so I was in the hospital from the 1st of November 22 till almost the end of January of 23. That's a long time to be in the hospital. And the doctors had given up on me and were going to send me to hospice. My oncologist at Yale said, okay, since you're going to die anyway, basically, this is what she said, since you're going to die anyway, how about I try this new and very intense chemo and radiation. It'll only take 8 days, and let's just see if it does anything. So she did that. It did get it away from the carotid, but see, all of this is just an incredible miracle. It really is, every bit of it. Whether God heals through the doctor or magically, we call magic. It's not really magic, but nonetheless, she did that and it got away. So they sent me to a surgeon, but you have to wait 3 months after radiation to be able to do anything. So I was scheduled for surgery the 1st of April of last year. And they did a biopsy to see how much cancer cells were left. And when they did that, they came back and it said, inconclusive. I don't normally do this, but my arm actually just went up all like that automatically. And I said, that's because there's nothing to conclude. He said, that's because we cannot find any cancer cells in your neck. Now, I was scheduled for surgery to the point that the anesthesiologist had already called me. And when they had to have the oncologist surgeon and a reconstructive surgeon, and they were all lined up. I'm talking about 3 days from when this biopsy happened, and they couldn't find anything. I don't know who was happier, me or the surgeon.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So that God was conclusive about it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, he took care of all that. So
that's right.
Yeah. Well, listen, Sandra, we thank you so much for tuning or letting us hear your story, and let us know if you'd like to contact her. And also, you can go to our website to request the free gift basket. We've sent out 25, almost 26,000 now of those all around the world. So if you know anybody who has cancer, or like Sandra, you help us distribute them too, right? As an ambassador of Stronghold.
Definitely.
Yeah. So she helps pass them out. And so if you'd like to do that with us, give me a call on that, email me. And we thank you, Sandra, and take care, everybody. God bless you.